and welcome to episode 2 of Metalhead's Book Club. And today I'm not going to be talking about a book that was recommended by a Metalhead or that inspired an album or a song or whatever, but a book that was written by a Metalhead. Dee Snider, the driving force behind iconic 80s rock band Twisted Sister and all-round heavy metal icon, has decided to bless the world with his debut novel, Frats. And in the blurb it reads, "If you are looking for a daring, disturbing, honest story that examines the pressure of toxic masculinity in the high school hallways, look no further." Okay, so I know nothing about the whole USA fraternity, sororities of like college campuses and high schools. My knowledge of this goes as far as one story by David Sedaris where he mentions that his dad used to be in a fraternity and he used his fraternity paddle to beat his kids when he was super mad at them. I watched Scream Queens, which is like a comedy horror TV show set in a sorority, and that movie Paris Hilton was in, that I can't remember what it's called, also based around the sorority. That's all I got. Like, I know nothing about this whole thing. So Frats tells the story of Bobby, a 17-year-old boy who moves into a new town and has to go to a new high school and makes a new friend called Brett. And when he arrives there, he is approached by a bunch of fraternities, all like, "Hey, come and join us. No, come and join us." And he's like, "It's okay, I'm cool." But then his friend Brett gets attacked by the leader of another fraternity from a different high school, and Brett defends him, thus putting himself in a lot of trouble with the other fraternity leader called Jimmy O. So he has no choice but to join a fraternity in order to have backup to protect himself against this boy. He has to go through this insane initiation program, which is just essentially glorified torture. And once he's in the fraternity, he can have the backup he needs to defend himself against Jimmy O, but also he has to go along with all the drinking and the partying and the violence and all the negative shit that comes with being in a fraternity, because peer pressure. And all of this leads him down a slippery slope of not good things happening to him and all the consequences of the terrible decisions that he made. So, this book is 98% show don't tell. And oh my god, it's so frustrating because it's all show don't tell, and it's also written for somebody who clearly knows what Bobby is going through and what he has gone through, and like what it's like to be in a fraternity, what it's like to descend into alcoholism and drug addiction, which I don't. So reading this book wasn't very helpful to me. The characters are all one-dimensional husks. They have no emotions, no feelings, they just exist in this world. We never really kind of know why they do what they do, what's their history, what's their motivation. Give me a bit more than that. This book honestly felt like reading a first draft. Dee Snider put down the ideas that he wanted to explore in this book and then didn't do that, just left everything as is, just basic first draft. No bulking out anything, no emotional exploration, no nothing. So Bobby arrives in this new town, new kid on the block. He wants to go and explore the neighborhood, so he goes out and he meets Brett, and that's it. It's like, oh yeah, I made a friend, and oh, you like comic books, and I like comic books. That's all well and good, but can we have like a bit more than that? Like a reason to maybe imagine that Bobby might be an actual human being by maybe giving him some emotions. How does he feel about being in this new town, in this new neighborhood? Is it very different from where he came from before? Is the tarmac the same? Are the cars the same? Are the houses the same? What about the people? How does he feel? Is his heart racing because he's excited, or because he's scared and he's trying to hide it? What is he skipping because he's happy and he's excited to be there? You know, what's he feeling? What's he going through? In what way is this different and a change of scene to where he was before? How does he feel about meeting Brett? What's he smelling? What's he hearing? You know, is he like smelling the trees or hearing the birds or an ice cream van chime going off? Like, what's going on around him? Set a scene. Tell us the story. And the same thing when he goes into the new high school. What is it like? What are the corridors like? Is it the same as his old high school? Are the kids the same? How does he feel about going to a completely different school with completely different faces, none of which he recognises, no one he can relate to? What is he going through at this point? There's like almost a quarter of the novel that is dedicated to the whole initiation process where he goes into the fraternity. And a lot of it is physical torture, and it's gone into in a lot of detail. All this physical torture, there's humiliations, sometimes he has to walk around high school with like bricks in his bag, or he's made to like lick somebody's boots, and he gets beaten a lot. And at the end of the initiation program, like, they beat him with a baseball bat that's been like sawn in half lengthwise, and they abandon him in a forest, like in the cold, in the dark. So he goes through all of this, and again, there is no emotion attached to any of this. There's this one point where he has like this sort of conversation with his dad, and his dad kind of knows that he's being initiated into a fraternity, and he says, oh, but it's, you know, it's fine, it's okay, these kind of initiations, because they build character. In Bobby's introspection, he's saying it's not building up, it's breaking down. Okay, so he goes through all this torture, and as I said, there is no emotion attached to any of it. So he, like, there's one point where he's standing outside in the cold, and he can, like, hear the other initiates being beaten inside, and, like, the screaming and the noises, and he has to stand outside listening to that, and does not feel anything. He is not afraid, he is not, you know, angry that he has to be put through this humiliation just in order to protect his friends, or to protect himself from Jimmy. Nothing. Void. There's so much time in the novel dedicated to all of this that I would have expected it to have some kind of effect on his psyche, because physical injuries heal. Mental ones don't. Like, those you carry around forever. So I thought there was going to be some subplot about him having PTSD and how it affected his life and how he had to hide it, because this is a book that is supposed to denounce toxic masculinity. So why don't you do that? You know, give me a scene of him putting on a brave face when he's having the shit literally kicked out of him, but, like, let's have a scene of him going home to his bedroom and crying in his closet, holding a pillow, rocking backwards and forwards, locked in a closet trying to muffle the noise of his crying because he doesn't want his parents to know, because he doesn't want his friends to know, and he definitely doesn't want the other fraternity members to know, because men don't cry. And it's weird because this stuff actually comes up later on in the novel. There's a moment where he ends up accidentally beating up Brett without knowing that it was him. He says that. He says, oh yeah, well, the injuries will heal, but the psychological ones won't. Okay, so that, like, this is known, but not worked on in any way at all. And the other one is Men Don't Cry. Again, comes up later on in the novel. Why don't you... This was such a missed opportunity to have this whole, you know, initiation process going on, like him putting on a brave face, him going through the torture, but what's going on in his brain? What's going on when he's at home, when nobody's looking? Such a big missed opportunity there, Dee. And the other weird thing is, like I said, this takes up a huge chunk of the novel. There is pages and pages and chapters of this, and it has no effect on him. It's never mentioned again, it's never brought up, he never alludes to it. He is clearly not traumatized. So what was the bit about, you know, it not being about building character, but breaking someone down? What was the point of it? What was the point of all this violence? Because it doesn't have any consequence on him at all. So, to me, it just seems like shock value. That's all it is. And it doesn't seem to me like that's what this book was going for. Like, it wasn't going for shock value. It was going more for a commentary on toxic masculinity. But that's not what we get. Why? So once Bobby is in the fraternity, he has, and it's essentially a descent into hell. So it starts off with partying and drinking and the ever-going war with Jimmy and his crew. There's a scene where they're having a party, it's all going well, but when they go back outside, they realise that their cars have been smashed, and it's been signed by Jimmy O and his crew. They end up organising a big fight, but the police come and shut it down. So then the deans of their high schools end up having a meeting and bringing the two fraternities together so that they can solve their issues. And the thing is, Bobby's fraternity accused Jimmy O's fraternity of wrecking their cars. And Jimmy and his crew accuse them of wrecking their cars. What this kind of seemed to me was like somebody else was working behind the scenes. And I actually kind of thought maybe it was Brett and Brett's mates, trying to get both of these groups to mutually destroy each other or show the world how terrible they were and how destructive they were. Because it seemed that way, it was somebody else that wrecked the cars. And they even mentioned that, well, this is something uncharacteristic that they normally wouldn't do. So, but it could have been an opportunity for something else to be going on, but we never find out if it actually was Jimmy's crew that smashed the cars and who smashed Jimmy O's cars. We never find out. Also, all of these cars being smashed, it's they all get their, windscreen smashed and their tyres slashed. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage, and it's not a consequence for anyone. I get that they're all rich kids, but it kind of seems bizarre to me that these cars and they're nice cars as well, it's these cars that their parents paid for, that their parents are lending to them, all get smashed, and this is again not a consequence for anyone. It's never mentioned again. So the two fraternities end up in full-blown war, and Bobby ends up during a drunken rampage beating up his best friend Brett accidentally without realizing it was him. Brett had already had his arm broken by Jimmy O. That's what got Bobby into all the fraternity business in the first place. But for some reason, when Brett got his arm broken, his parents didn't go to the police or he didn't do anything about it or tell anyone about it. But when Bobby broke his nose, then his parents know about it, then he goes to the police. Why would he do that with Bobby but not Jimmy? Because it would seem like Jimmy, dude must have a criminal record with everything that he does. So that seemed a bit odd. There's a lot of, like I say, show don't tell. It's always going back and forth about, oh, well, I beat up my friend, so I feel terrible. Yes, in what way? In what way is this affecting you? Because he keeps going on about how much it's affecting him, but how? How is it affecting you, Bobby? What is going on in your brain? What shame do you feel? How does it feel? What is your body doing? Give me some information. When you're writing, you really need to think that the person who is reading you knows nothing about what you are talking about. I don't know what it's like to be a teenage boy in the USA. I don't know what it's like to be in high school in the USA. I don't know what it's like to be in a fraternity. I don't know what the descent into alcoholism and drug addiction is like. I don't know any of these things. You have to explain it all to me. I don't have human emotions. I need them all explained. And this is what I mean where I said, it really felt like you needed to know what it was like. You needed to have been there and gone through this exact same thing in order to have any kind of way of relating to Bobby in this novel. This is exactly the same issue that I had with When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill, because she basically did exactly the same thing, but with women, systematic abuse on women, where it was you have to know what it's like to be harassed in order to understand what's going on in this book. Otherwise, from an exterior viewer, it makes no sense. That is not what you want. You need to really push it to the very limits, explain everything, the emotions, the feelings, what his body's doing. Does he have like a tightness in his throat? Is his brain bashing against the inside of his skull? Is he lying awake at night, going through the scene over and over again and thinking of how he could have avoided it or how he could make it better, and having like imaginary conversations in his head where he's asking his friend for forgiveness? Like, what is he going through? Give me something. And then he has the descent into alcoholism and drug addiction, or supposed drug addiction, because we never actually see any drugs. Like, a lot of things in this book, we are told about it, but we are never shown it. And it's just completely glossed over. Like, how does an 18-year-old have a descent into alcoholism? I don't know. So it's just like, what, in the space of a year, he went from not being an alcoholic to an alcoholic? How? How does he pay for the alcohol? Where's he getting it from? We don't know. We don't know, because he doesn't have a job. He's at high school. So what is it? Are his parents paying for it? Is he stealing it? Is he working jobs to pay for his addiction? Like, how is he, where's he getting the alcohol from? How does this work? And, you know, how did he go from maybe starting like to have a beer every day, and then two, and then, you know, harder liquor to get to the like full-blown alcoholic stage? Again, just that's it. We just have to take it for granted. Well, he's an alcoholic now. Okay. At the end of year prom, for like graduation prom, he has to go and pick up his girlfriend, and he is again just riotously drunk. So all through the novel, he's having this relationship with this girl called Angel. Angel has this dad, like her dad, and he is always saying to Bobby, you know, if you hurt my girl, I am going to do something really terrible to you. Like, he's always kind of hanging this threat over Bobby's head, and he hates fraternities because he thinks they're gangs, and he's kind of right. He doesn't want him to drink. And he's always saying, if you do something to my daughter, something really bad, there's going to be very, very dark consequences. And there are several moments throughout the book where things obviously go very badly between him and Angel, because there's like the time where they're at a party and he's getting really drunk and he's not spending time with her, so she just decides to leave. And things like this keep happening, and she stays with him for some reason. I don't know why, because she could do way better than him. And it comes across as somebody who is willing to sacrifice her well-being for somebody else. And I really felt sorry for her. Like, I mean, she has no personality to speak of, no interest, no nothing. So, like, I didn't feel that sorry for her. But to me, it seemed like Bobby had this really perfect girlfriend, because it's all about him. Everything's always about fucking him, and never about her. Yeah, so, like I said, all the way through the novel, her dad is, like, dangling this threat over his head that if you hurt my daughter, I'm gonna really do something bad to you. And at the prom, he comes to pick her up, and he's already completely drunk, and he reeks of alcohol, and Angel's dad is like, you smell like a distillery. This is your final warning. And so it's implied that something really bad is going to happen with Angel's dad. Like, all the way through this novel, we have this setup that something bad is going to happen due to Angel's dad. And then he gets arrested and for like assault charges because he broke a teacher's neck at the prom. Despite Angel doing everything within her power to try and keep him out of trouble and to try and stop him from drinking, you would think that would be enough to prompt the response from Angel's dad, but it doesn't. So there is this massive setup all the way through the novel and zero payoff. The end of the novel is also really bizarre, because all this novel is a flashback. So he's sitting in a car, he sees a number plate with frat initials on it, and then he starts telling his story to the other people who are in the car with him. So we get to the end of the novel, we kind of come back to the present day where he's sitting in the car, they're stuck in traffic, and he's just finished telling his story to them. Okay. And then they will ask, oh, so what happened to Jimmy O? And so Jimmy O, all the way through the novel, like, he is a horrible person. He's like the evil incarnate. Bobby actually says that he thinks that Jimmy actually knows that he's evil. I don't think he does. He does all these terrible things. And all the way through the novel, it's shown that he is extremely good at manipulation and keeping himself out of trouble, which is what good manipulators tend to do. They know how to cover their tracks and how to throw other people out under the bus and make it look convincing for everybody. And he does this with Brett. He sets he pits Brett against Bobby because he knows how close they are, and because he knows a lot, Jimmy. Like, he always knows where Bobby is. Like, when he's going through his initiation, he's kind of like standing outside on a street corner because he knows he's going to go down there. Like, how he knows this is a mystery. Like, again, it implies that there might be somebody double-crossing them, or like a spy or something. But that doesn't go anywhere, so we never know how Jimmy O knows all this stuff, but he just does. So he recruits Brett as a way to get back at Bobby, and he ends up getting Brett accused of murder, a murder that Jimmy O committed. And he does this extremely convincingly, and there is absolutely no evidence to incriminate him. So this is somebody who knows what he's doing. And again, when they have the confrontation between the two fraternities, he is extremely convincing, extremely good at keeping himself out of trouble. So this is somebody who knows how to manipulate. Jimmy is probably the best, like, the character in this novel that was the most fleshed out, at least at least for like his character traits, not necessarily his interest or personality or anything else, but like, he is very clearly somebody who's very good at manipulating it and covering his own tracks, so he never gets in trouble. He throws other people under the bus, and he does it convincingly. At the end, like, the people in the car are like, oh, so what happened to Jimmy O? And this is like so insane to me, because he ends up getting convicted of murder because apparently he murdered this woman, and like this mother of two, and then tortured her and burnt her alive. And it's so bizarre because it's just something that is so out of character for Jimmy O. Like, everything we know about this character, everything we've seen from him, his behavior and how he manipulates other people, how he lies very convincingly, how he knows how to be extremely charming and sweet when he needs to, how his mother's always got his back, how he'll throw other people under the bus, again, convincingly, how he is calculating for all his attacks throughout the book. He knows exactly when to strike, where and how to keep himself out of trouble. So why he would openly do this to somebody, like, it is never implied at any point in the book that he has any interest in hurting women or mistreating women or anything like this, or mothers. Like, this just comes out of nowhere. So, like, if you're gonna get him convicted, at least try and make it something that is coherent with the character, that makes sense. Also, Bobby and Angel, it's implied that they get married. What? Like, what? To me, that was such a missed opportunity as well, because that could have been his greatest loss in all the terrible stuff that happened with the fraternity, all the peer pressure that led him down this dark road that led to alcoholism, violence, him getting, breaking somebody's neck. Losing Angel, losing this amazing, kind, sweet person who was willing to sacrifice her well-being for his. And she even says, during the last conversation they have, I'm not, you can ruin your own life, but you're not going to ruin mine. So she has this, moment of this epiphany where she's like, okay, you're a destructive person and you're going to drag me down with you if I stay with you. And it kind of pissed me off, because that could have been his greatest loss in all of this, that he had this perfect woman and that he'd never found the same connection or the same love since, because of the bad decisions that he made. I guess Dee Snider wanted there to be some kind of silver lining at the end, but it just seemed weird to me. It's like, you don't deserve this girl. You didn't do anything to deserve this, and none of their relationship was about her. We don't know what she likes. All we know is that she's got straight A's at school. That's all we know. She's hardworking. Why is she with him? We don't know. Why does she like him? We don't know. Why did she reject him in the first place? We have no idea. she doesn't like fraternities, but she puts up with him being in one. She doesn't like him drinking, but she puts up with him when he drinks. She doesn't like him taking drugs whenever it is that he's supposed to have taken drugs. And the last thing is when he does get arrested and he gets bailed out. Like, that is the day after he breaks the teacher's neck. He's hungover, but then he just gets out. And so he goes to see Angel and he's like, okay, well, I'm not an alcoholic anymore and I'm not a drug addict anymore. And, like, he's suddenly sober. Like, what? So like I said, I've never been through drug addiction or alcoholism, but I have seen people who have and who have recovered from it. And the amount of willpower that you need to get over this is insane, and I really admire you if you are a person who has gotten over these issues, because it is hard and it really takes a toll on people. And it's honestly, if you know anyone who's a recovering drug addict or recovering alcoholic, they deserve praise, but it's not something you just get over just like that. That's not how it works. So that was a bit weird. So all in all, I thought it was a shame because there are good ideas in this. Like, there's a moment where he talks about how little influence parents have on teenagers. And it kind of echoed what I was saying about Light from Common Stars, where, like, whenever something bad happens with teenagers, the parents get blamed for it. But, like, in this novel, he goes, like, Bobby says at one point that, oh yeah, well, teenagers spend, like, 8 hours at school, and then they spend 8 hours sleeping, and the rest of the time they spend in their rooms. And so the actual influence that parents can have on them is extremely small, because they're never going to be at home. They're going to be out with their friends or whatever. They're going to be doing something else, but they're not going to be spending time with their parents. The actual influence that parents can have on their teenagers is extremely small. There's just one paragraph about that, and it's never alluded to again. All the toxic masculinity stuff, again, is just like thrown in there extremely superficially. Again, there's a scene where there's one of the parties where Angel storms off, and all the frat brothers are like, oh yeah, well, she doesn't know what a real man is, and she doesn't appreciate a real man. Like, okay, what's a real man according to you? This book really left a big hole in my bank account because I paid €30 for it, which is a lot. For, like, I rarely spend that amount of money on a novel, and it's only like 200 pages long because it's all show don't tell, nothing's fleshed out. Honestly, I do not recommend this at all. It was extremely frustrating to read. I didn't learn anything from it. Like I said, it's just like, it's a first draft, and it makes me sad because, like I said, there's good ideas in this, but you need to flesh out a novel more. Like, these characters are bland and boring. They have no emotions. They are empty husks, and all we get is a succession of events that are entirely told and not shown, and nothing is shown. Yeah. I recommend listening to Dee Snider's music way more than reading his novel. So that was Frats by Dee Snider, a book that left a big hole in my bank accounts. So if you know of any other metalheads who have written books or who've recommended books, please let me know in the comments, because unlike the popular artists and musicians where you can find whole websites dedicated to the books that they recommend, it's a lot more difficult to do that with metalheads. So do tell me if you know anything, if anyone's a reader or whatever. So yeah, keep me informed, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Have you read this book? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Don't hesitate to love, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.